Before we start modeling our wooden tray, we'll go ahead and save the project in the appropriate folder. So I'll select the home icon. I'll be saving mine in this collaborative making project, my folder, and I will select this save icon. I'll call this a small wooden tray. Eventually. All right, so we saved it. So now to begin modeling, I'll start with a sketch. I'm gonna go ahead and minimize this panel and select the sketch icon. The first sketch I'm gonna do is on the top plane. And I'll use L on the keyboard for line, or we can select the line icon here. So L, I'll drag it up, left click it, continue to left click around until I have a shape that looks like that. Then I'll start to use the dimension tool and constraints to further define this sketch. So I'll start by giving this a horizontal constraint. And I do want to add one more element to the shape here. I'm going to add, in this modify, I'm going to put a fillet in these corners. And I can select both corners. I'm going to give a fillet of 1/4 inch, 0.25 inch radius. And now I'll start to dimension this out. So this will be, I'll go with 1 inch here. I'll do 1.61 here. We'll give this an angle dimension, 135. Give this a length dimension, I'll go 0.5. The tray, to keep the tray manageable, like time-wise, we're trying to keep it in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 inches. So now I'm going to go ahead and make these lines construction lines. They're not a part of our geometry, they're just reference lines. And I'm going to mirror this shape twice to develop a kind of a rectangular shape. So I'll select the mirror tool, and I'm going to select each element, and then the line to mirror about. Say OK, and now I'll repeat that. And then the line to mirror about. OK. And we can finish the sketch by selecting the check mark or the finish sketch icon. So now I'm going to do, this is going to be the perimeter of our part. I'd like to do the profile next. So I'm going to initiate another sketch, this time on this front plane. And I'll use the line tool again, so L on the keyboard, and I will start drawing out the profile shape that I want to use. And start to define it with the sketch and constraint tools. So make this horizontal, make these parallel, give this a dimension. On the bottom, I'm going to leave 1/4 inch, and the walls, I'm going to make them 3/16 inch. We can probably get by with making the walls as thin as 1/8 inch, but with the wood, it starts to get pretty flimsy if we go too small. The depth of our plate can't really be much bigger than 3/4 inch. That's about the thickness of our material. And the the interior length here is not too critical. We don't want to come all the way to the center. We can keep it relatively small and we'll fill it in later. And now I need to give a angle dimension here. I'm going to have a pretty tight angle. I think we can get away with as much as 135, but I'm going to go about 110. And now I'm going to draw a construction line. Just bring it all the way down and select it again and say X. And I want to make it align with this outside edge here. So I'll use a coincident constraint. I'll select that point, select the line, and that will snap it to our outside profile. And now I want this edge to also be in line with that plane. So I'll snap to that point that's on the plane. That fully defines our profile. So I'll close that sketch. And now we can use the sweep tool in Create. Come down to Sweep, and it's going to need a profile and a path to follow. So we'll select this path and select OK. And now we just need to fill in this blank portion, and we're going to soften some of these edges. So I'm going to initiate a sketch on this plane. So I'll select this bottom face first, and then the sketch icon. And then I'm going to close the sketch. It captures, that sketch now has, it captured these lines, so I can extrude from them now. So E on the keyboard for extrude or the extrude icon, and I will select that face. I want to extrude it to an object. So on this distance, I'll select to an object, and I'm going to select this upper edge and ensure that the join operation is selected. There's also a cut operation or a new body. Just make sure that join is the one that's snapped to. So now we have our basic tray. The last thing I'm going to do is add a fillet using the fillet tool. You can select the fillet tool or F on the keyboard. And I'm going to put a fillet on the inside edge and this outside face. I can select the face. It's going to be a small fillet of 0.03 inch. I'm going to leave this top edge alone because we're going to have to use this surface to align to later. And we don't want to degrade that shape too much, so do OK. This is a good point to save. And now we'll move on to the CNC manufacturing space. So now that we have our model complete, we'll go to the manufacturing workspace by selecting this design tab and scrolling down to manufacture. And the first thing we'll need to do is create a new setup. And the setup defines our material and how it's oriented on the machine. So to begin with, we'll be machining the backside of our part first. So we'll need the Z axis, which is the up and down movement on the actual machine, to be coming out of the bottom of this part. So we'll come over here to the WCS tab and select model orientation, and we'll use the select Z axis option. And I want to select this the model Y axis as our Z, and flip the Z axis over. We'll leave the X and Y in the center of the part. That should be fine for this project. And we will go look at the stock. Now the first setup by default does a relative box size with a 0.04 inch offset on the sides and a 0.04 offset on the top. We'll leave the sides alone, but to save time, we are not going to mill the bottom surface. So I'll make this 0. And then it is important at this point to check that the Z value, this thickness of the material, is the same as what we measure with calipers on our physical material. They need to be aligned. If they're not, we need to go back and make adjustments to the model or reconsider how we're doing this. Say, okay. So now we will create a machining operation that will mill from this edge all the way down to the bottom here, all the way around. And to do that, we'll use this 3D toolpaths option. And the best option for this is going to be the 3D adaptive toolpath. We'll start by selecting a tool. We'll be using this shotbot. Oh, that did not work. Now to create the toolpath, we'll select the 3D tab and come down to a 3D contour. And we'll select the tool first. Go down to shotbot tools. We'll be using a ball end mill, this 1/4 inch radius ball. Select. And now we will select the geometry. This tool on center tab, we want to change this to outside boundary. And this avoid surfaces tab, we'll select that and select this top face. If we leave the default depth alone, we're going to end up with a slight scallop at the bottom here, which we can remove with a little bit of hand sanding, or we can bring the bit down further by the radius of the bit. So the radius is 0.125. We'll give it a negative value. And if we do this, we're going to want to have, instead of cutting on the surface of the CNC base, we'll put a sacrificial piece underneath it. Now we can go over to the passes. We want to change the direction of cut from climb to conventional. And we're going to want to decrease increase the resolution. So this maximum step down, we'll go ahead and make this 0.01, and that'll give us a fairly clean surface that we don't have to sand very much. And the last thing we'll do is select this feed optimization. And okay, it will generate. So if we look at this from the side profile now, you can see it's coming down quite a bit further, an 1/8, and that should clear away the little scallop that would have been left behind. So let's see if we can verify that on the simulation. So we'll select the contour, simulate, and I want to show stock, but not, I'm going to go ahead and show the tool, and we'll simulate. Let's see as it's starting to come around. Speed this up. And we'll start to slow it down a little bit. Speed that back up till we get towards the end. And it looks like we can bring that up by a little bit. It would leave just a little bit of material there. I'm going to go ahead and stick with that so it's nice and clean and say, okay. So that's the tool path to mill the backside. Next, we'll do a new setup and mill out the inside of the tray. So we'll select the new setup tab, and so now we'll select the new setup tab, and we just need to change the orientation of our coordinate system to be the Z going up. And we're going to go ahead and work from the center of the part again. And we do need to go back to, we want to refine our setup. So we're going to select this relative size box setup, and it'll be this almost identical. So it'll be 0 offset, and okay. Now to get the part onto the machine oriented again, we're going to need to cut a perimeter fence. And we don't need to create a new setup or anything to do that. We're going to create a 2D cut path, and cut the cut path without anything on the machine, and score the machine so we can see where the cut path is going to go. And then we'll put a little fence around it. Run that same program again, and that'll give us a pocket that our part can fit directly into. So to do that, I will go to 2D path and select a 2D contour. And we will change bits and use from our ShopBot tools. We'll use a 1/4 inch flat end mill. Select, go to geometry, and we want to use this outside most profile. And if we look at this from the top, this arrow represents the side that the bit will be cutting on. And for the fence, we want to be cutting on the opposite side. So we'll select the arrow. And we want to score the surface we're mounting to just a little bit. So we'll go down by 0.01 inch on this bottom height. And instead of the selected contour on being the depth, we want to be at the model bottom. And that will bring the height down to the bottom of the part. We'll take a look at passes. We will change from climb to conventional. And we will use the feed optimization and select OK. So what that will do, it's going to give us a cut path, a fence that will be on the outside of our part. So finish that. So now we've cut our fence, and we want to go ahead and mill the interior surface out. So to do that, we'll use the 3D adaptive clearing. We're going to change the bits back to the radius bit, ball end mill. Select. On the geometry, the So now we'll develop the toolpath to remove the interior material. So we'll go to 3D and select the adaptive clearing. We'll need to select our 1/4 inch radius ball bit. Select. And in the geometry, this bounding, machine bounding, we'll do selection. And we want to select this profile just outside of our fillet. And we want to go tool outside boundary. And we can leave the heights alone. And in the passes, we'll change to conventional. And we want to go with a little bit finer resolution step down. So we can go to 0.1. The finer the resolution, the cleaner it looks, but the longer it takes. And we don't want to leave any stock, so we'll deselect stock to leave. And we do want to use the feed optimization. Select OK, and we'll let this generate. And once it completes finishes generating, we'll do a simulation to see how it's going to look and get an idea. Okay, so now I'll select it, come up to simulate. I'm going to hide the model, show the stock. I'll go ahead and show the tool, press play. I'm going to speed it all the way up. And I hide the model so I can make sure that it's actually doing this little fillet here. And so you can kind of see the resolution that we'll get. We're going to have some small lines here, and at the bottom surface, we're going to have these scallop lines, which they don't look too bad. If you want to remove those, we can decrease the increase the resolution, this step over, or we can come in with another toolpath to clean those up. I'm going to leave that the way it is for now and close this out. We'll save this. And now we're ready to post these out. Now, if you get lost where you're at, or you want to rename these so that later on you can come back and remember what you did, you can double click on these and rename them. So this can be the bottom plate setup. You can rename this the top plate, and so on. You can also rename the toolpaths. So this can be the fence cut, and this can be the kind of bowl cut. So then the next thing we need to do is export our G code to the machine. So we'll start with the first program. We'll select it, come up to the G1, G2 tab for post-processing. We will select the ShopBot machine, select the folder we want to put this in, and post. And the name I'll give this is the bottom plate. And we'll send each toolpath out separately. So again, G1, G2. It should retain the last setup I have. So I'll go to post, and this is fence cut. And again, G1, G2, post, and this is the bowl cut. And so now we can move on to the machine.